2, 1. Let's go. Welcome to the Fiction Addiction Podcast, a podcast where we go one-on-one with fiction creators, such as authors, filmmakers, actors, songwriters, and more. Each episode, we get the inside scoop on our guests' creative process, the ups and downs of their industries, and our guests also give out tips and tricks that help them become successful. And now, let's jump into the episode with your host, Chris C.L. Lowry.
All right. Welcome back to the Fiction Addiction Podcast. My next guest was born in 1977 and grew up in Wallkill, New York. He grew up with a love of science fiction, Dungeons and Dragons, and video games, starting back with the Atari 2600. He is now married with twin daughters and lives in southern New Jersey and still loves everything he loved growing up. He's also firmly in the pineapple belongs on pizza side of the argument and feels like the 90s was only a couple years ago. Ladies and gentlemen, Will Castillo. Will, what's going on?
Hey, how you doing, man? Good talking to you. Thanks for having me on.
It was good. Man, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. I guess we'll start with pineapples on pizza. We're going to start right there.
Yeah. I love having pineapple pizza. It's my favorite pizza. I get so many sideways looks, especially like living in Jersey right now, which is pretty much the pizza capital in the Northeast.
Right.
I'm in the minority in my family. I love my ham on pineapple pizza. One of my daughters does, but the rest of the family's like, no.
Oh, you probably were ecstatic when you found out she loved it.
Yeah. She's like, it's not bad. I'm like, I'll take it.
I'll take that all day.
Yep.
So what is that like when you order and then like from the actual store? Are they like prepared for it?
Basically, yeah. At first, like if this was like maybe 10 years ago, like no, we don't have pineapple. But now I guess it's a little more popular. I don't have a problem ordering it. And the place I always order my pizza from, they know me, so it's fine.
When was the first time you had it?
First time I had it, I think I worked at Blockbuster. And it was a late night. I think it was actually the night Titanic came out on video. So like, yeah, I'm dating myself. But it was like a whole and we just ordered a bunch of pizzas, and so we were just like, let's try that ham and pineapple. And I was like, this is my favorite pizza I've ever had in my life.
Wow. Now, we are currently still in a global pandemic. We're approaching the end of 2020, but we're still in it. So how have you been managing through this pandemic?
Well, honestly, my day-to-day hasn't changed that much. I work for a construction company, and I run the parts warehouse. So I've been going to work every day, but I'm alone in the office. So I've had a lot of time to myself. So I'm kind of just sitting there talking to myself. I bring my Switch to work. I write. I mean, it's nice, but it's weird, you know? Like I've had a hard time concentrating on things just because aside from the pandemic, everything else just going on in the world. This is just a crazy year.
Yeah, absolutely. Now being a fan of science fiction, when this whole pandemic began and everything was all hectic and markets were selling out and we were getting to a crazy point back in March and April, like how was your initial reaction to when everything first happened?
Well, like any rational person, the first thing I thought of was like, all right, zombies. But
the apocalypse is here.
Yeah, I'm like, we've been preparing for this. So, but the craziest thing is that whole toilet paper thing. Like, why did people immediately just go right to the toilet paper? Usually, like, if it's a snowstorm, you got your eggs, milk, bread. You can make some French toast. But they're like, okay, crazy pandemic, let's get the toilet paper. You got bigger problems.
Yeah, when did toilet paper get up on the top of the list?
Yeah.
Now, for your love of science fiction, when did that come about?
Oh, absolutely, it was Star Wars. I never saw
Really?
I never saw the original in theaters, but I did, or like when I was a kid. But I did see Empire Strikes Back. That was like the first movie I actually remember seeing as a kid. And ever
Hmm.
since then, that's where it's from. Like, I wasn't a big Star Trek fan. I know that might anger some people, but I've always been firmly Star Wars. So yeah, ever since Star Wars, I just
No.
kind of fell into that. I fell into Back to the Future. Um, just anything just unknown, like fantasy. I like Lord of the Rings, things like that. I like it. Like I love D&D. Like right now, I'm playing a Wood Elf Druid in D&D. I love it. But I've always
No,
loved
really.
like that science that's close enough that you think it's there, but like we're probably years off. Like I
Mm.
still want a hoverboard, and I'm mad we still never got hoverboards that work.
I think we were supposed to be in flying cars at this
Yeah,
point.
the
They were
Jetsons lied.
telling us. They definitely lied. We got the Tesla.
Yeah,
That's
that's cool.
the closest thing.
Yeah.
So when did your writing journey begin?
Uh, I've been trying to write. Like I've always loved writing in school and things like that back in high school. But I've been trying to write a book for probably close to 8 years or so. And I've started a couple, and they just never really went anywhere, just because I got bored
Hmm.
myself with the story. So I'm like, or I just ran out of ideas. I wasn't inspired. So the way this book came around was, I was working a terrible job. I'm not going to name names, but I basically stood in place for 10 hours and put things on shelves. You could probably put the dots together with that. But I'm sitting there. I was standing there working, just letting my mind wander, and you're kind of isolated where I work. So I was wondering what decisions I made in my life to wind up where I was at the moment. Like I've moved on from that job,
Mm.
but I wondered like what I could have done differently that put me where I am. And that's where the spark of the story came from. It's just, all right, well, in a different Earth, in a different universe, I may be a successful, like something else, not just standing here
Wow.
wasting away in a warehouse. And that it all snowballed from there. Like every day, it was weird. I always picked this one station to work just because I could concentrate there because it was isolated enough from everyone else that I could stand there and talk to myself all day and people wouldn't think I was just this crazy, insane person. And I was just coming up with stories every
Right.
day. So that's where it spun
Mm.
out of.
Now, what was the process like from getting the story ideas in this warehouse to the actual beginning of a actual story for
Well,
you?
the
How
first
did
thing
that
was
occur?
the setting. The first thing was the setting. And I knew I wanted to set it like in and around my hometown. Just because I've always heard when you write about what you know. And I lived there most of my
Right.
life. So all the places I mentioned in the book were real places when I was growing up. And there's always like there's the bar that they hang out in, the Griffin. I used to go there. Like that was my place. I used to love that place.
Mm.
So that's where it's been out of. I started with the setting, and then I started with, okay, he's going to be a kid in college. And from then it just kind of spun out. And when I started writing it, I honestly didn't have a clear direction of where I was going. The first draft was a mess. I still have my first draft in the drawer. But once I like the second or third chapter, I started to get the nuggets, and then every day when I went to work, I would just say, okay, Jake's in this situation. What happens next? And it just got a little wilder and wilder until it finally just all convened into a story.
Mm. Were you a writer growing up?
I used to write stories in school. I did write some like D&D adventures for my friends when I was a kid, but I never really I always like to tell stories, and I always read comic books. And like you write fan fiction when you're younger because that's what you do. You draw pictures and you write fan fiction.
Right.
That's what I would do. It never went anywhere. Like it was always a couple page story. It wasn't anything major. But Yeah, so I've always liked to write and I've always liked to create. It just took me a while to focus on a story that actually, like, I don't know, like spoke to me when I wrote it.
Mm. Now, what was the first book or author you fell in love with?
Can't remember the author's name, but the book was Devil's Race. I want to say the author was Avi or something like that. I remember getting it in probably seventh grade, and it was an interesting story. It was just I vaguely remember it now, but there was like a kid. I want to say he was like in New Mexico or something, and he comes across like his double, but it's an evil double or something like that. But it's like, it's like a young
Mm.
adult story, so it wasn't anything like too intense. But I just remember that like sticking with me. Like I remember the cover vividly. It was a purple cover. There was a lightning bolt on it. The writing kind of looked like Stranger Things. So that's the cover that I remember right now. I want to say it was Avi, A-V-I. I think that was the author.
Mm. So from that book, what was it about? What was it about that book that made you fall in love?
That was just like the first book I remember. Like I couldn't stop reading it. Like I just kept flipping the pages. And I probably read that book in probably like in that 1 year, like 3 or 4 times. Like I just kept going back to that. And it was just, the story was interesting. And every time I read it, even though I knew what was going to happen, I still got nervous. Like I said, I can't remember a lot of
Mm.
the details about it just because it's been years. But I just remember just being intrigued with the notion of like a double and like an evil double and things like that.
Mm. Now, what motivates you to write now?
Right now, I honestly I'm motivated right now because in my head I probably have about 5 books planned in this same story, like 4 more sequels. Like I'm currently
Really?
working on the second one. Yeah, like I know where I want to go, but right now, just with everything going on, I've had a hard time concentrating on book 2. Like I'm just starting my 6th chapter on book 2, but I have
Mm.
probably 4, maybe 5 books planned in it. Like I'm iffy on that. Like I might be able to end it at 4, but it depends on where I go. Because the one thing I realized when I started writing is that I wrote an outline after chapter 5. Like every chapter I wrote one sentence, basically the direction of where I wanted to go for that chapter. I wound up changing that a few times because sometimes the story takes you in directions you weren't planning on going.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it happened a few times. And I was just like, okay, I guess I'm going to hit this part now instead of 3 chapters from now when I wanted to do it, and I'll do something else then. So it happened a lot more. Once I got to like the meat of the story, I was like, all right, yeah, things have to switch up a little bit.
So what is your current publishing status? Are you traditionally published, independently published?
I'm independently published. I did choose that route after many, many, many months of research. It just seemed like, yeah, I may have my story done. And I did go through, write a few query letters and tried to go the traditional route. But after a while, I was like, you know what? Do I really want to wait? And if it's a story I want to tell, why am I waiting for someone else's permission to tell it?
Mm.
So I just decided to go my own way and do it independent. And I love it, but it's a lot more work than I thought going in.
Really?
Oh,
Really?
marketing, like writing the book was honestly the easy part. It's the marketing and having,
Oh yeah,
oh,
the marketing is the beast.
oh my God. Like I have something planned, coming up for the 1 year anniversary, which is October 29th. I'm actually working with an artist on Twitter with, some character sketches and character portraits and things like that. So I'm hoping to have,
Oh really?
yeah, probably about the
Cool.
time the podcast hits. I'm hoping to have some stuff out there, but yeah, but that's the hardest part, man.
Now, what did you expect going into it? Going into independent and publishing. How much did you know about it when you chose to take this route?
Well, when I first started, I honestly didn't know that much about it. I didn't have the first clue, and and I researched the different ways to do it through KDP, through Ingram Spark. Um, it's daunting. I watched a lot of videos. Jenna Moresi and I can't remember her name. iWriterly. I watched a lot of their videos just to get some insights into the industry because I really didn't know anything. I knew I had a story. I knew I wanted to publish a book. But I didn't know where to go from there. And those YouTubers actually helped me out. They're authors also. Jenna Moresi writes Save Your Sister. And I believe, iWriterly, I don't remember her name, but she has the, Cyborg Tinkerer coming out. Those videos helped me a lot.
Mm. Now, how has this journey been? You touched on it a little bit with the when you mentioned the marketing, but how has the journey been from the idea to the actual physical book being released
Oh, it's
last
been a
year?
blast. Like, I'm loving it. I wish I could do this full time. Like, I wish I didn't have to have a real job. But, I honestly do, I honestly do enjoy it. Just every time I get like one new book sale, I'm like, woo, look at that. Someone else is reading my story. Like, it's exciting.
Right.
And I mean, I've gotten good reviews on Amazon. Like, I'm glad that the people that have read my book enjoyed my book. Like, I threw it out there, like, knowing I liked it and knowing a few close people to me liked it. But, I just didn't know how it would be received. And that's always the scariest part. It's like you're throwing, like a bird, you're throwing your baby out in the wild to see what happens. And it's doing well. So
Right.
it makes me excited. That makes me motivated to keep going with the series.
Now, I noticed you've done a lot of reaching out to book bloggers and bookstagrammers. So how was that journey? What made you do those things? Because I see a lot of authors not doing it, and then obviously you did it and got a real good review from a couple of them. So what made you reach out to them, and how did you go about it?
I was researching I didn't know what to do, honestly. I didn't come into this with a roadmap. I've been flying by the seat of my pants with this whole thing. And I just fell down a rabbit hole of looking for YouTubers and looking for Instagrammers and things like that. And I've reached out to a lot never bothered to respond. But I mean, with the few that did, we struck up like a relationship. We talk every now and then. We message each other. But I mean, it's just, if you don't have a clear plan at first, it's a lot tougher. I mean, these are things I wish I knew going in because honestly, it's just something I've never done before. Like, I've taken my hand at trying to write stories, like I said, and it's nuts. But the story isn't the hardest part. The hardest part is just getting it out there and letting people shouting and be like, listen, I wrote this book here. Why don't you check it out if you like sci-fi, if you're a fan of 90s nostalgia stuff. You gotta try to where you know.
Right. Now you touched on, obviously we talked about the publishing journey. So how was it for you finding everything? Because for those who don't know, when you do independently publish, you have to do everything, every little step to every big step, from finding editors, cover designers, and everything in between. So what was the journey or process like taking each of those steps, from finding your editor? How did you find your editor to finding your cover designer?
My editor, I found, she's actually one of my very good friends, and I didn't reach out to her to be an editor. What happened was, after I finished my manuscript, I put the first page up on my Facebook, and I'm like, oh, for people that didn't know, I wrote a book, blah, blah, blah. And she sent me the picture back, and she had redlined and circled all of my grammar mistakes. Because
the red lines.
she went to school to probably screenwriting and performance and things like that. So Stacy Carroll is just fantastic. Anastasia Carroll. After that, I reached out to her like, hey, you want to be my editor? Like, I like what you did here, and you made even my first page just sound a lot better. And that's what we did. So that was the first section, was finding the editor. And I know I drove her crazy. Like, she's the sweetest person in the world. Oh, she's the sweetest person in the world. But we would go back and forth on a few things, but I know I was constantly like, so where you at yet? You done yet? What are we doing? Like, 'cause I was just excited. But no, I love her. For book 2, I'm definitely going to be using her again, probably. But as far as the cover goes, that was a funny thing because I was trying to find a cover designer, and I talked to a few people, and we we went back and forth. And I was like, I don't know. And I was kind of just poking around, um, just messing around with things and images, like temporary images. And I stumbled across the picture that became the cover, and it was almost exactly what I wanted. I wanted just a shadowed
Mm.
person walking into what looked like a portal in a city. And that's what that picture is. I found it. I was like, so I bought the rights to it, and that's my cover. And then I had my niece who actually did photo design. She tweaked the font and things like that just to fine tune it. But I honestly lucked into the cover. There was just no way around it. Once I saw that picture, I'm like, that's my cover.
That's it. So what was your family's reaction when you told them that you are now an author and you released the book?
Well, my immediate family, like my wife and my kids, they were excited because I didn't tell them until I was probably 3/4 of the way through the book because I didn't want them to get
Really?
excited.
Why is that?
I didn't want them to get excited for something that I may not finish because I know me. There's been
Okay.
many times over the years. There's been many times over the year where I get really excited for an idea and it just kind of peters out. But so I wanted to make sure I got at least halfway before I said anything to anybody. So my kids helped me with some of the conversations between like Jake and Scott and Beth and things like that. Um, so they helped me tweak a couple things here and there. But
Oh,
my
that's
mom was,
amazing, man.
yeah, my mom was supportive. Um, I know she has the book. I don't know if she read the book. um, but yeah, and my friends were like, "Oh, that's awesome," and they picked it up and they liked it and things like that. I'm like, I want honest reviews. I don't want you to just tell me you like it because it's me. I'm like, fine. Like, no, really, we like it.
Right.
So yeah, the reaction was overall positive. But yeah, I didn't tell anybody until I was about 3/4 of the way through the book.
That's crazy.
Oh yeah, I woke up early on my days off. I woke up probably an hour and a half before everybody else in the house and just wrote for an hour and a half.
Mm.
And then if anybody went out, I would write some more.
That's interesting you say that because a lot of times people, especially with families, people always question, like, when do you find time to write? When do you find time to finish a book, finish a story? You just touched on it a little bit. So why was that important? Because it sounded like you made the time
And
to write. You know what I mean? Instead of just making excuses. Why was that important?
because a friend of mine, Brittany Brombacker, she's a video game journalist. She said you have to make the time for things you want to do because you'll spend all this time working for someone else, making someone else all this money, making everybody else's life happier and better. But what are you doing for yourself? You're coming home at the end of the day and you're just sitting there watching TV. You're not doing anything to better yourself. So I
Mm.
made a conscious effort to dedicate the first couple hours of my day on my days off to writing. And that was the only way I could do it. And then, of course, once you start writing, then you try to sneak in other parts or other times to write. So that's what I would do. I'd be sitting there, like, oh, I got
Right.
an idea. Let me go in. Or I reread what I wrote and make some edits or something like that. But yeah, I tried to definitely make time to do it because it was important to me.
Do you have a specific writing routine?
Yeah. Well, with the first book, there's a store up the street, Wawa. It's a big chain up here in the Northeast. So I would go there, get my breakfast burrito and my coffee, come back. If I wrote the day before, I would read what I wrote to see if I missed any words or if like anything could be a little clearer. And then
Oh,
that
okay.
I'd probably write. And my goal was usually between 700 to 1,000 words. I usually went over that. I probably hit closer to 1,500 words almost every time I sat down.
Mm.
Just because the ideas were fresh. Like I'd be on my way home because I had an hour drive back and forth to the job I was at. And the whole time my mind was
Wow.
just going. So
Mm. Now, you finish this book, you get it edited, you have the cover designed, and you order your proof, whether it's one, whether it's many, and then that first package comes to your house. You open it up, and it's your first physical copy of your book? Walk me through that moment.
It was unlike anything else I had seen. I opened the box. I was excited. I think I ordered. I want to say I ordered 4 proofs. I ordered one for each of us, my wife and my kids. And I ordered 2 from KDP and 2 from Ingram Star, just because I wanted to see the publishing differences. But when I opened that book the first time, it was like, wow, I really wrote a book. I teared up a little bit. I was like, I can't believe I actually finished this story. And of course, your first proof, you open it up, you're like, all right, well, I see I got to adjust the margin. I got to didn't line up right. But it's still, I still have my proof copies. Like, I'm never gonna get rid of them. They're just like, yeah, they're imperfect and things like that. But that was my first holding in my hand my story.
Right. Now, give me one piece of advice for an aspiring writer.
I would say, if you're not going to commit and put in the time and make it important to yourself, don't do it. Because you're just going to set yourself up for heartache and disappointment. Like, you need to make the time to do it. Even if it's sitting at work and you're kind of slow and you throw out a Facebook post like, hey, by the way, my book's out there, you always have to be marketing yourself. So if you're not going to make the time to do it, don't bother. Don't get started with it, because it's going to be more frustrating than rewarding for you.
Now, your book, Jake Howard, Multiverse 101. So the synopsis is, on a 9th grade field trip to Mohawk Mountain, Jake Howard discovered a mysterious portal that was gone in a flash, but the image of it never left his memory. Now, about to start his junior year at State University of New York in 1997, he meets a girl named Beth. She's brooding, mysterious, and beautiful. Of course, Jake is instantly attracted to her, despite his friend Scott warning him that he has a weird feeling about her. One night, while at a local bar with friends, Jake notices his astronomy professor talking to Beth. After observing the conversation and following Beth out of the bar, Jake's tender understanding of the universe is shattered, and Jake quickly realizes that his junior year is about to be way more than he bargained for. Now, explain this story to everyone listening.
Well, first, I forgot how wordy I was on the back of the book, because I've shrunk that synopsis down. I was like, wow, I gave out the first 5 chapters for free. All right, so
I think it was a good synopsis.
Well, thanks.
Very good synopsis.
So, yeah, Jake in 9th grade. Mohawk Mountain is a real mountain up in New York, up in New Paltz, New York. He's up there. He kind of wanders away from his field trip group, and he sees this portal. And when he sees it, it vanishes, and he nearly falls off the mountain because something pulled him towards it after it closed. So his friend saves him, Scott. They've been best friends forever, and kind of brushes it off. He doesn't tell anybody what they saw or what he saw, but it never left him. So in his junior year, he's actually moving in with Scott in the dorms, even though he lives 15, 20 minutes away, just to get out of the house. And he bumps into Beth, and through one thing and another, it turns out that she is a protector of the multiverse from an organization called the Casters that have been protecting Earth for years, generations. And there's countless other Earths with slight differences. It's actually based on real science called daughter universes, where Earth is like this Earth, but there's one difference. Almost like the show Sliders, if you guys remember the show Sliders.
Right.
Yeah, so once Jake finds that out, a mystery unfolds onto why Jake can interact with these things, and why did he see that portal when he was in 9th grade and things like that. I'm trying to dance around it because I don't want to give anything away. But that's basically the crux.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, what came first with this story? The character or the setting?
First was just the general idea, the whole multiverse thing. After that, I was trying to pick a name that was just like an everyman name. Like he's not anything special. He's very much, at least in this book, he's very much the sidekick to his own story. Like he doesn't have powers. He doesn't have anything. He's just a normal guy. So one thing that always stuck with me was, in the movie Legend, old movie with Tom Cruise and Tim Curry, the guy's name is Jack. Like, it's not like a fantasy name. His name's just Jack. So I was like, all right, Jake Howard. That sounds like a good name. After that, I was like, all right, well, things like that. And then the character's like, okay, well, his best friend is Scott. So I had to come up with a little quick thing for that. And I'm like, all right, there's definitely a girl involved because there has to be a girl involved. But she's basically
Always.
yeah, and she's the one that has all the power in the story, but Jake doesn't know this at first. So yeah, I very much made the conscious decision to make him the sidekick to Beth, at least in the first book. Because
now, where's the inspiration come from the other names?
Oh, Professor Brian Klein. Klein is on the last name of Ernest Klein, the writer of Ready Player One, and that was a huge inspiration to me. That book is like,
really,
yeah, I love Ready Player One, and my daughters actually pointed out, they're like, yeah, you definitely like borrowed bits and pieces here. Like I could definitely hear, because we listened to the audiobook of Ready Player One countless times, and it's like it definitely sounds like Will Wheaton's reading of it. Like you sound like that a little bit. So Ready Player One was a huge inspiration to me. As far as like the names of Scott and Beth, it was just, I was trying to think like Scott Connolly. All right, that sounds like the best friend who's a little bit of a douchebag, but you love him anyway.
Right.
And then Beth Davenport just sounded like mysterious. Like, okay, Davenport's like a mysterious sounding name. So that's where the names basically came from.
Now, what was it about 1997 that made you want to base the book in that year?
I love the 90s. I mean, I graduated high school. I graduated high school in 95. There's actually a few reasons why I picked the 90s. One, no cell phone. Because if you wrote that kind of story now, oh, look, there's a picture of this. Oh, like, there's no way to have proof of all that stuff. There isn't. And I just felt, I made that decision. I'm like, yeah, it has to be in the 90s. Just because of that reason. Like, yeah, cell phones were like an emerging technology, but nobody had one yet. And then other things where there's just certain things like references to like video stores and the music at the time, the college radio station. It's just, once I decided on the 90s, the other pieces fell into place. Especially that I'm studying it in the town I grew up in. So like, I have vivid memories of that town. Like to this day.
Right, that's crazy. Now, growing up, speaking of the town, growing up, that name, did that freak you guys out? Wallkill, New York?
Oh, 100%. 100%. Like, as a little kid, like, I grew up in Plattekill, and then we had Wallkill, we had Fishkill. If you got lost in Wallkill, you wound up in a town called Warkill, which was really crazy. So everything, because it was all Dutch up there, so everything ended in kill.
Right,
so
right.
It was, I think I make a joke about that in the book too. I'm like, I thought I lived in a very violent part of the world when I was a kid. Just everything was killed. It was just weird. So, yeah, that's what it was. Just weird.
And you also made a playlist for the book.
I did.
What inspired you to do that?
Every day I'd sit there with Spotify on while I wrote, and because I was studying it in the 90s, I listened to 90s music the whole time while I wrote. So I'm like, oh, it'd be kind of cool if like, because in my head as I was writing, I saw it as a show. Like I was seeing the scenes, I was seeing the characters, I was hearing like the score in the background. So I'm like, oh, I might as well like just kind of make a playlist of stuff that I like to listen to while I write the book. And then as I was going, like Jake calls out a lot of movies and music and games in the book. And some of them that he
Mm-hmm.
calls out are actually pertinent to the scene. Like, if it was to be made into a show, that's the scene that's the music that would be playing during that scene. There's a couple of key scenes with songs that, like, if you follow the playlist, it kind of goes in order, but then I kind of just put a mishmash of other stuff that I listen to. But yeah, that's why it was just the music was a huge inspiration to the direction of the story. Like, every now and then I'd come across a new song that would inspire me about another part of the book that maybe I hadn't even thought of.
Mm.
Especially I'm not gonna, without giving anything away, once you get to probably the third act, there's a scene there that there's a song that's specifically called out because of the lyrics. And I'm like, yeah, I definitely have to have that in.
Now, obviously, with science fiction, lovers of science fiction, obviously, like you explained earlier, most of them like the detail, the fact that it's close to grasp, but not able to. So, how much research went into this book for you?
A surprising amount, actually. Once I came up with the multiverse idea, I knew there was different types of multiverse as far as like different theories and things like that. So I was just scrolling and I came across the daughter universes, which is the, like, one
Mm-hmm.
change from here can do something different here. I was like, oh, that's kind of what I'm going for. Because on another Earth, there might be another Jake and Beth that never met. So how would that story roll around? That every decision that you make spawns another Earth. So theoretically, it could be that every decision Jake makes, whether it's good or bad, is spawning an alternate outcome somewhere that may or may not come to bite him in the ass some point in the future.
Mm. Mm-mm-mm. And in this book, we're gonna do a quick insider, real
Yeah.
quick. um, Pizza, half meatball and onions, half ham and pineapple. Have you ever ordered that before?
Yeah. Because again, ham and pineapple, I'm like in the minority when it comes to like my house and my friends. So yeah, we usually order something on the other half. Usually it's pepper and onions. Sometimes it's meatball and something else. But yeah, we always do a half, or we usually do a half and half, a ham and pineapple and something else. By the way, my editor absolutely is against the ham and pineapple pizza. She was so upset.
Why?
She cannot stand it. She's like, pineapple does not belong on pizza. End of story. I'm not editing this book anymore.
She's done with you. Now, did you always know that this was going to be a series? Or
Yeah.
did just the ideas just kept flowing?
I always knew it was going to be a series. Like, I knew I had at least 3 books in me. And then as I kept thinking and thinking, I was like, no, this is going to be at least 4 or 5 because I have a lot of ideas of where I want to go. I already have through book probably 3.5 plotted out. Like, there's certain points that I know I have to hit and certain places where they have to go. So through 3.5, I have a rough outline of the whole story. That's where I'm like, I may go 5, I may just stop at 4, but I'm definitely already 3.5 ahead.
So what can we expect this next series to drop, or do you have its projected year for the next for book 2?
Yeah, book 2 I'm hoping to have out next year. I'm hoping it's probably going to be spring to early summer. That's what I'm hoping for. It may wind up being about the same time, October, worst case scenario, but I'm hoping to have it out late spring, early summer. That's my goal anyway.
And what else can we expect from you outside of the series?
Expect from me outside of the series? Well, I play a lot of games. I'm online almost every night. So anyone who wants to find me, I'm on PlayStation, I'm on PC, I'm on all kinds of stuff. But yeah, that's pretty much what I do. I work, I hang out with my family, we do things together. My girls are older now, so we're at that age where like they're looking at moving out. And so, twin 19-year-old girls, they think they know everything.
They-
I love them to death, but oh my god.
Now are you going with PS5 or Xbox?
I am going with PS5. As far as the console generations go, 360, in my opinion, beat PS3. PS4 beats Xbox One. But as far as the new
Mm.
system, the PS4 and the Xbox Series X, which is a terrible name, there's more games on PlayStation. There's more games on PlayStation that I want to play than I want to play on the Xbox. And anything I want to play on the Xbox, I can play on my PC. So there is no
Right.
upside to me getting an Xbox. PS4 though, I am dying for that Miles Morales game. That looks fantastic.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I made the decision to not stress myself out, and I'm not worrying about getting a PS5 until the spring, which hurt a little bit until I found out Miles Morales was also coming out on PS4. I was like, oh, okay, I can wait now.
Okay. Now, speaking of video games and movies and comic books, can we expect anything, or not expect, but do you have a vision for Jake Howard in the multiverse beyond books? Because just reading it literally flowed like a movie. So do you have a vision beyond books for this?
I do. When I wrote it, I pictured it like a Netflix or CW show, like just that kind of pace. Like,
Mm,
I know the CW superhero shows, they go by three tenets. I believe it's heart, humor, and heroic. That's kind of what I tried to do with my book. So I would love to see it as like
right.
a Netflix show. After book 2, my editor and I are talking about possibly working on a screenplay also alongside book 3 for book 1.
Oh, nice.
So I'm hoping, like in my head, I have the cast pick. I know who I want. But by the
All
time it
right,
gets to be,
all right. Let us know who they are.
all right. So for Jake, I would love to have Tom Holland. I think when I
Mm,
see him, I think he'd be perfect as Jake. Um, for Scott, he's the one that's like it's a little up in the air. I think who's the one on Riverdale? The Dylan or Cole Sprouse, the one that plays Jughead. Whichever one plays Jughead, that's who
oh
I always see
yeah,
as Jake. Yeah, I always get confused with it.
yeah.
For Beth, there's actually two actresses that I see. The first one I saw was Florence Pugh. She's in Fighting with My Family. She plays WWE Superstar Paige. I thought she was
Hmm.
fantastic in that. And I think when I wrote Beth and then I saw Florence Pugh, I was like, that's the face I've been seeing while I'm writing Beth, and I had no idea.
Mm.
The other actress I thought of, if Florence Pugh is unavailable or it just doesn't happen, Peyton List, who I don't know if you've seen Cobra Kai.
Yes.
Okay. She's Tori in season 2.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. She was also on that show.
Yeah, that's
Jeff
a good
Kids
choice.
used to- But
Yeah.
yeah, that's who I would see as Beth. And then as Professor Klein, actually, David Diggs from Hamilton.
Mm.
I think he'd be great.
Really good choice.
Yeah. Which I watched Hamilton.
Who you getting to direct it?
Ooh, see that? If it's a show, it's one of those things where you can have multiple directors.
Yes, you can. You
Yeah.
definitely can.
And one of the directors that I would love would be Kevin Smith, because he's good at directing people talking.
Mm.
Like, I think Kevin Smith has a good vibe that would fit well with this. That's really the only director that springs to mind when I think of a director. Like, I keep being half tempted because I live in South Jersey. I keep being tempted to drive up to Red Bank and leave a copy of the book at the offices there. I just haven't done it yet.
Oh, you better. You definitely better do that.
Yeah. I'm actually going up that way next weekend, so possibly.
It's possible. A book may show up,
Yeah.
may or may not show up. Now, tell everyone where they can order the book at, and also your social media contacts where they can reach out to you, follow your work, and everything like that.
Okay, yeah. You can order it off of Amazon. You can order it off of Barnes and Noble. Pretty much anywhere you buy books. That's why I went through Ingram Spark and KDP. So yeah, just search for Jake Howard Multiverse 101. And it's available as a paperback on Kindle and as an audiobook. I got to shout out my audiobook narrator, Jake Hunsberger. I went through that route, and once I heard his voice, I was like, this is the voice. This is fantastic. This is the voice I heard in my head. He's fantastic. You do pick up the audiobook.
Now, real quick with the audiobook, how many people auditioned for the book?
I had about 10 people audition, and I put up a sample chapter. I had a few come back, and I was like, all right, this is good. This is good. I like this. I didn't like that. And I was about to close the auditions. I was like, all right, I think I'm going to settle on this one guy. And then when Jake Hunsberger put in his interview, literally on the last night I had the auditions open, he read the...
Oh, it wasn't him at first.
No, it wasn't him, and it was somebody else.
Oh, wow.
He got in at like the 11th hour. And once I heard it, I was like, this is the guy. Like, without a doubt. So, Jake Hunsberger, he's on Twitter. He doesn't tweet much because I actually talked him into getting a Twitter. So, Hunsberger Jake. But, on my Twitter, I'm going to say half-assed ninja, but it's not spelled half-assed ninja. It's HALFAZEDNINJA. There's a story behind that.
What's the story? Oh, you got to give it to us because I'm curious right now.
So originally when I played Xbox 360, my name was Half-Assed Ninja, spelled Half-Assed Ninja. So I'm playing Rainbow Six with my buddy, and all of a sudden I get booted off Xbox Live. And I'm like, all right.
Oh.
And this is like 4 years after having my name. I get booted off Xbox Live. And I'm like, all right, that's weird. So I contacted Xbox, and I'm like, all right, well, I got booted offline, and then it says I can't play right now. What's going on? And they said someone complained about my name. And I'm like, really? I've had this name for 4.5 years. So the word ass is making somebody upset. And they said,
oh my God.
So I literally changed it to S's to a Z. And I have had no worries ever. So yeah, on Twitter, on Instagram, on Instagram, on PS4, on Steam, I'm Half-Assed Ninja with a Z. And then there's a Facebook page also, Jake Howard Multiverse 101 on Facebook. That's my Facebook page.
All right. This was the Fiction Addiction Podcast, and this was Will Castillo. Will, thank you so much, man. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us on the Fiction Addiction Podcast. Make sure you visit fictionaddictionpodcast.com for links on everything we talked about today, as well as awesome resources, additional tips, and Fiction Addiction merchandise.